When I was 18, I thought I had life all figured out. I had just started my first full-time job, had my own beat-up old car, and was saving up for an apartment. I wasn't chasing trouble, and I wasn't looking for drama. But somehow, trouble always has a way of finding people who least expect it. That's when I met her. Her name was Sarah. She was sweet, soft-spoken, and had this kind of innocence that made you believe she had never done anything wrong in her life. She'd been homeschooled, raised in a small, tight Christian household, the kind where her mother kept the Bible on every table, and her father said grace before every meal. I thought it was kind of beautiful at first, a family that still cared about morals and tradition. But it didn't take me long to see that not everything holy shines bright. Sarah's dad ran a small construction business, and her mom stayed home. I met them a few months into dating. Her dad was a heavy-set man with rough hands and a quiet stare that felt like it could read my soul. Her mom was something else. She smiled too wide. Talked too sweet. It was like she was trying to sell me something invisible. You ever meet someone who makes you feel like you owe them something, even when you've done nothing wrong? That was her mom. Then one day, her dad got hurt. A garage door slammed down on his arm while he was at work. It was bad, crushed bones, nerve damage, the whole thing. He couldn't work again. Disability checks started coming in, and that's when everything started to change in that family. It was like someone had flipped a switch in Sarah's mom's head. Suddenly, every one of her kids started developing something wrong with them. Her oldest son was suddenly bipolar. The middle daughter, anxiety and panic disorder. Sarah, my sweet, kind Sarah, was dyslexic. But here's the kicker, Sarah could read better than I could. She admitted to me one night, her voice shaking, that her mom told her to fake it. That she'd gone along with it because she didn't want to upset her. That's when I started realizing just how deep her mother's manipulation ran. See, her mom was friends with their family doctor. She convinced the doctor to sign off on all these so-called disabilities. Soon, all the kids were getting monthly SSI checks, but guess where the money went? Straight into her mother's bank account. Sarah told me her mom made herself the payee for all four of them. Then she became their PCA, personal care assistant, claiming $16 an hour for each kid. That's $64 an hour for doing absolutely nothing. She wasn't taking care of them. She wasn't even home half the time. She was out shopping, getting her hair done, buying new clothes. The family that claimed to be so humble, so faithful, was living off lies. I kept my mouth shut for a while. I didn't want to stir the pot. But I couldn't ignore how Sarah was being pulled into her mother's world of deceit. I wanted to help her get out. Around Christmas, I decided to do something kind. I bought her parents tickets to see Journey, her mom's favorite band. It wasn't cheap either. I figured, maybe this would make them see I wasn't such a bad guy. Maybe it would calm things down between us. They loved the gift. Her mom almost cried. She hugged me and said, "You're a good boy." Sarah's lucky. I should have known that hug was fake. A year and a half later, Sarah and I were getting serious. She wanted to move in with me. I said yes without hesitation. We talked about getting a little apartment, maybe starting our own life, free from the constant control her mother had. But when she told her mom, all hell broke loose. Her mom screamed at her. Told her she was abandoning the family. Said Sarah's move would destroy their finances because her PCA payments would stop. She even accused me of manipulating Sarah, of trying to steal her SSI money. That hit me deep, because the truth was the exact opposite. I wanted Sarah to end all that nonsense, get a real job, live her life honestly. Her mom didn't see it that way. She saw me as a threat to her little empire of lies. Things got dark. Her dad, who had always been quiet, suddenly turned against me. He called me one night and threatened to teach me a lesson if I didn't stay away from his daughter. Sarah was crying almost every night, torn between her family and me. I tried to be strong. Tried to tell her it would be okay. But you can't fight someone's parents forever. Not when they hold that much power over their child. One day, she just broke down. She said she couldn't do it anymore. That she loved me, but she couldn't stand against her mom. And just like that, she was gone. I can still remember that night. Sitting in my car, staring at my phone, waiting for a message that never came. I'd given everything to that girl, my time, my money, my heart, and it all ended because her mother couldn't stand losing control. Months passed. I tried to move on. Got a new job, started looking for a place of my own. Found a nice little apartment, nothing fancy, but it had this quiet view of the woods out back that made me feel peaceful again. Only problem was, I was about $300 short for the deposit. I was stressing out, trying to figure out how I'd come up with it. Then, one night, while I was going through my old emails, I saw something, an old Ticketmaster receipt. The journey tickets. That's when it hit me like lightning. The tickets were still in my name. The concert was coming up in 2 weeks. I sat there for a minute, thinking about everything that family had done. The lies. The manipulation. The way they destroyed what Sarah and I had. And I thought, maybe it's time karma got a little help from me. I logged in, clicked on sell tickets, and listed them. They sold fast, faster than I expected. The money hit my account, and that same night, I paid my apartment deposit in full. 7 months after gifting those tickets, I finally got something back. 2 weeks later, my phone blew up. Messages, missed calls, voicemails, all from Sarah's family. Her brother called me names I can't even repeat. Her mom left me a long voicemail saying I'd humiliated them. Apparently, they'd driven 3 hours to the concert, only to get turned away at the gate because the tickets had been resold. They spent another 3 hours driving back home, furious, embarrassed, and empty-handed. I listened to their messages, one by one, then leaned back in my chair with the biggest grin on my face. I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel shame. I felt peace. Sarah eventually texted me, saying her parents were so mad they could scream. She asked me why I'd done it. I told her the truth, because her family had taken enough from me, and it was time I took something back. For the first time in months, I felt like I'd stood up for myself. People say revenge doesn't solve anything. Maybe they're right. But sometimes, it evens the scales just enough to let you breathe again. Don't play games with people's kindness. Because one day, the person you stepped on might just be the one who holds your ticket to karma. A few years passed after that. Life has a strange way of pushing you forward, even when you don't feel ready. I worked, saved up, met new people, and eventually started to forget the sound of Sarah's voice. But sometimes, late at night, that old ache would return. Not because I missed her, but because I still couldn't believe how much one person's greed could destroy so many lives. I used to drive by that town sometimes. You know how it is, curiosity has a way of pulling you back toward old scars. Their family house sat at the end of a quiet street, white paint peeling from the porch rails, a fake welcome sign still hanging by the door. Everything looked smaller than I remembered. It didn't look like the home of a woman who once bragged about beating the system. It looked hollow. A mutual friend told me that after the concert fiasco, things started falling apart for them. Her mother had gotten caught during a random review of her PCA files. Turns out, the state had been looking into fake caregiver claims, and she was exactly the kind of case they were after. They found inconsistencies in her paperwork, false signatures, missing hours, and unexplained expenses. The investigation went on for months, but it was enough to freeze her payments. Without that easy money, the whole house cracked. Her dad's disability check was still coming in, but it wasn't enough to cover their bills. The kids, who were all listed as disabled, had to suddenly figure out how to survive. Sarah's brother tried working at a warehouse but quit after 2 weeks. The younger sister started posting about toxic energy and mental exhaustion. They weren't used to earning their own way. Sarah, though, she was different. I heard she moved out a few months after the audit started. She got her own job at a small cafe and stopped relying on SSI. That made me proud, even from a distance. I never reached out. I didn't need to. Knowing she finally broke free from that manipulation was enough. One evening, I was sitting on my porch, a few years older, a little wiser, and sipping the same cheap coffee I always did, when I saw a car I hadn't seen in a long time pull up in front of my building. A blue sedan. I didn't move at first. Then the door opened, and out stepped Sarah. She hadn't changed much, but there was something in her eyes, the kind of tired peace you only get after surviving chaos. She smiled, nervously, and said, "Hey." I didn't know what to say. I just nodded and gestured toward the steps. She sat down next to me, quiet for a moment, before she said, "I heard what happened that night, with the tickets." I was mad at first. But looking back, I get it now. I looked at her, unsure if she was serious, but she was. She told me her mom had blamed me for everything, the investigation, the money loss, even her dad's depression. But deep down, she said she knew none of it was my fault. Mom was never the same after that night, she said quietly. She couldn't stand losing control. But she needed to. It was the only way the rest of us could finally grow up. For a second, I didn't know how to feel. Part of me wanted to be angry again. Another part just felt sorry. Not for her mom, but for the girl who had been trapped under her mother's shadow for so long. We sat there talking for hours. About life, about mistakes, about how hard it is to find good people when the world teaches you to use others first. She told me she hadn't dated anyone since me. Said she was scared of repeating the same kind of toxic pattern. I told her I understood. Before she left, she said something that stuck with me. "You know," she said, "I think what you did that night, selling those tickets, was the only thing that finally opened Mom's eyes. She realized she couldn't control everything forever." I smiled. Guess I gave her a little taste of her own medicine. She laughed softly, stood up, and said, "Sometimes, people need to feel what they've done to others." Then she turned and walked back to her car. I watched the taillights fade into the night, and for the first time since losing her, I didn't feel bitter. I felt grateful. Years later, I heard her mom passed away quietly. Her father sold the house and moved into assisted living. The kids had all gone their separate ways. Some working. Some still drifting. Life moved on, as it always does. But that story, that chapter of my life, it taught me something powerful. People can build an entire life on lies, but truth has a way of finding them. Maybe not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But someday, somehow, the truth always comes knocking. I think about that sometimes when I see parents who manipulate their kids for money or attention. I think about how easily kindness can be mistaken for weakness. And every time I start doubting myself, I remember that moment when I took back my power with a single click. It wasn't revenge. It was balance. And you know what? I don't regret it. Not for a second. Because some people don't learn until they're the one standing outside the gate, realizing the show's already started, and they're not on the list.